So, Hollywood has run into a problem recently. Almost every new franchise they start up ends up failing. And even if the start is promising, by the end,
it's a bit shit.
So today I wanted to look at franchises that reached a level of success where choices were made which were not spurred so much by creative vision, but rather by money and popularity. So today we're going to take a look at 5 categories of sequels that I've all given names to, which I'll display in some way how a franchise can become too popular and compromise the series' vision. Also, before we start, Game of Thrones Season 7 and 8 is like the TV equivalent of a lot of these things. Please remember to like, share and subscribe to The Young Cynics. Your support would be so great to keep this small channel growing. The Celebrity Parade. The Austin Powers franchise is of course not the most highbrow form of comedy, but it is pretty easy to get into. The films do feel like they are coming from a genuine place of love and affection for the old James Bond movies. Spoofing the ridiculous names, the main characters, womanizing ways, over-the-top villains, ridiculous henchmen, and the one-liners. However, once Goldmember rolled around, the franchise had become too big for its own good now. This is not a dig at the film's opening scene, that's fine with Tom Cruise, Gwyneth Paltrow, Danny DeVito, and it kind of acknowledges what to expect from the film, a more glossy Austin Powers movie. But then the film kinda keeps throwing in random celebrities with no jokes to it other than
Take 2. It's Britney Spears!
Britney Spears, John Travolta, the fucking Osborne family, and Fred Savage. Beyonce's in it, but due to international law I'm not legally allowed to say anything bad about it, but look, she's not that great. They also just recycle the same safe jokes from the first and second films. There's something missing, they feel consciously safer. And the film is also devoid of the humour like this in the first film.
I'll stay.
I suggest you hit, sir.
I also like to live dangerously.
And it almost focuses exclusively on sex jokes and weird body humour that doesn't quite land, pandering almost exclusively to the teenagers who like to feel part of the joke watching a PG-13 comedy. Also, Mr. Myers, I would love to see Austin Powers 4 if you're up to it. But celebrity parades are common, especially in comedy movies, where instead of crafting jokes they just pop in a reference. See movies like Ted and A Million Ways to Die in the West, or stuff like the Friedberg-Seltzer movies, which is just, oh look, Hannah Montana took a dump on Spider-Man while Jack Sparrow jerks off Buzz Lightyear. It's familiarity through comedy. People will always tend to lean towards what they know, which is why sequels and reboots are the only thing given modest budgets today. Because people don't like to take risks, and we have a tendency to laugh at things due to a sense of familiarity and nostalgia for them. Take that scene in A Million Ways to Die in the West, where Doc Brown shows up. It has nothing to do with the plot and it doesn't further the story, but it gets the biggest laugh, simply because it's familiar to the audience. Number 2. The Trojan Horse. This sort of sequel has been showing up a lot in recent years. Films like Batman v Superman, Godzilla King of Monsters, The Crimes of Grindelwald, and The Amazing Spider-Man 2. They're all culprits of this sin. It's walking into a film that's been advertised for months, only to get a film that's half a plot and the other half is preoccupied advertising future films in the franchise. But to me, the biggest culprit of this is Avengers Age of Ultron. While the other films had copious amounts of non-subtle advertising and setups, Avengers Age of Ultron is unique because of a simple reason. This film is not bad. The other 4 films I noticed are all garbage, and that can easily be proven if you look at box office, critic scores, and where the franchises ended up. However, Age of Ultron had a great box office return. It was generally given good reviews by audience and critics, and the franchise culminated in the highest grossing film of all time. The problem with Age of Ultron is that it is one alright movie with a dozen crappy subplots. While the main plot is a bit too much of a globe-trotting lead-chasing film with a strange intent on constantly keeping the audience laughing, the amount of time spent to promoting Phase 3 of the MCU is done in a way which is annoying. It's like a kid constantly kicking you in the foot, letting you know that as it gets older, the more you're going to have to feed and nurture it until it sucks every last dollar out of your bank account. The scene where Scarlet Witch gets in everyone's mind and everyone has visions of their sequel was just segmented trailers. The scene where Thor takes a cave bath and has visions of the Gauntlet was a trailer for Infinity War. The scene with Cap and Iron Man setting up Civil War, the alluding to a Black Widow movie. The film never felt like it was building towards one thing. It was just discovering the stones, while every now and then, Ultron would pop up and remind the Avengers what he was doing. And it was something bad? Josh Whedon's frustrations have been well documented, how this film and the interference almost broke the poor guy. He wanted to tell a story of Ultron, but instead it got hijacked by a 2.5-hour teaser for Phase 3. But luckily for the MCU, this is the closest the franchise has gotten to truly compromising a vision, compared to these other ones. The copycat. This is where we get into interesting territory because sometimes making the same film in the sequel can work really well. An audience will like it for different reasons. The Force Awakens is a film that gives people the same feels they had when they saw the original trilogy. Die Hard 2 gives the same story, albeit unarguably weaker, but still a solid film, and a movie like Home Alone 2, the film which knew exactly what worked in the first place and decided to take that formula and put it in a location which allows for more fun with the concept. Like, what kid wouldn't love to walk around New York City with a shit ton of cash? The movie understood its audience. When I see adults complaining about how Home Alone 2 is just a remake of the first, I just wonder, why do you care? Kids who are watching this really don't care. The target audience got exactly what they wanted. I remember dying of laughter when Marv was getting bricks thrown at his face and electrocuted. It's part of the fun of seeing a kid who's kicking adults' asses. I'm not expecting a sequel which delves into Kevin's character or has themes or anything. Just give me more of that. It's perfect. However, making the same film can have massive backfire. Jaws 2, which is shark attacks people again, but the problem with that was that the characters weren't what made the first film. And while we love Brody in this film, he just spends the whole film moping around with his PTSD. He has no character, before killing Jaws in that bizarrely stupid way. And I can't tell you how much I wanted Jaws to snack on those dumb teenagers. But the main example is an infamous one. The Hangover Part 2. I don't like the Hangover films, like, at all. I think it's one of those weird comedies that appeals to a very casual audience and 12-year-olds who want to feel cool watching a comedy where they say shit and fuck. And actually, I prefer the second one to the first. The comedy has a bit more of an edge to it than the first one does, but I can't deny it is exactly the same movie, minus the Ed Helms song. The difference between this and Home Alone 2 is the core audience. The Hangover obviously appeals to a 20 to 30-year-old audience, who might want a bit more out of a second film, which is why you hear a lot more about this film being a rip-off than Home Alone 2 was. The audience wanted something new, but the writers simply changed the locations and was way too self-referential in addressing how similar it was to the first film. This self-awareness backfired on them, allowing even the most casual of audiences to realize they were being fed the same burrito, just in a different wrapper. Blatant money snatching. Back in 2010, a movie called Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 1 came out. Nothing happened, except for the film making $960 million. It was a sign that you could take a book and split the final film into two, because this is the epic final chapter and somehow it was deserving of such treatment. However, considering that Part 2 actually made Part 1 worth it in the end, this gets a pass. But then Twilight did it, and Twilight fans are in their own separate little world, so that doesn't matter. And then The Dark Knight Returns happened. That was fantastic, telling two separate stories, which still gelled together in themes. Part 1 about Batman's return, and Part 2 about confronting his past, in a brilliantly done way. Then The Hobbit did it, and look, they're fine, but they don't hold a candle to the Lord of the Rings film. And then came the film that outed this tactic as nothing more than a money-snatching ruse. The Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 1. I hate this film. I don't say this much, but this is genuinely one of the worst blockbusters I've ever seen. For me, it is up there with Catwoman, Suicide Squad, and Justice League. One thing happens in the film, and it's Katniss inadvertently killing hundreds of innocent people. There is a period where they literally give the audience the middle finger and show a cat chasing a light on the wall for about 10 times as long as they should. It has all of these incredible actors and they're all horribly wasted. They just spew out this nonsense. The film is just exposition of what will happen in the next movie. Peter is a zombie for 2 hours and it's just Jennifer Lawrence looking sad or confused while Lionsgate pulls $10 out of your pocket. At least when Allegiant tried to do this, even its teeny bopper audience told them to get fucked, and eventually they had to axe that last movie. Relentless abuse. Fuck you, Terminator franchise. Only one man can do it right, and unfortunately we've been deprived of his film so he can work on his blue monkey hair porn fetish theater for 11 years. James Cameron is one of my favorite directors ever. I love Terminator 1 and 2. Aliens is one of my favorite films of all time. I like Titanic. True Lies is awesome, and The Abyss, while I don't love it, is still a solid sci-fi movie. The Terminator franchise keeps sucking you in though. Dark Fate marketed from the director of Deadpool so ferociously, and the fact that Linda Hamilton was back to a point that you kind of just had to see it. And to see if we could finally get a Terminator movie that didn't completely suck ass. My 2-minute Terminator pitch was better than this 2-hour mechanical turd. Remember the brilliant finale of the first film, where they were running away from this thing that wouldn't give up in a dark factory with the moody lighting, the music, and you felt so claustrophobic and you cared because we had spent the whole movie on just these two characters. Yeah, now remember Dark Fate, where so much shit was happening it just made you want to step out of the theater and just go make sure you didn't throw up from all the garbage that was being thrown on the screen. Terminator is now the franchise that just won't stop. I hate the Jurassic Park franchise now. The first is in my top 25 of all time, but each film since has been somehow getting progressively worse. Fallen Kingdom somehow was worse and better than Jurassic World at the same time. But those movies make money. The Terminator films are being constantly given diminishing returns, in the US at least. But no one cared when Dark Fate came out, so hopefully they just stop. And right now I'm working on fixing Jurassic World or rewriting this new trilogy. So thanks guys. Tell me in the comments what's your favourite sequel ever and what's your least favourite sequel ever. I'll go first. The Dark Knight and Attack of the Clones. So thanks for watching guys, please like and share and of course subscribe. Thanks on recently reaching 1,000 subs and keeping this channel growing. And until next time, bye!